While we're just letting people join, feel free to check out the description. You can read along with the patch notes as we go along. Also down there is the redeem code and the link to the redeemer, which is the redeem code which is hidden inside the patch notes. So while you're waiting, you can go check that out. Hello Vaz, good to see you. Her name was, yes, a little bit late, had some last minute issues with the laptop, but we seem to be all good. As I've already mentioned, feel free to check the description. You can read along as we go along. Also, the redeem code hidden in the patch notes is down there, so you can use that to collect some American calories, I believe. Well, hello and welcome, and we're going to get kicking off with the review of the June 2021 patch notes. We are now officially live, as I've probably already mentioned twice, but yeah, redeem code and patch notes all hidden down below. He said he was doing it on Wales Weekly. What? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so starting off, obviously, we have the... obviously the Georgia is going to be the big thing that they're going to be following through on this update. But I guess some of the key things, obviously, it's launching on June the 21st, on Monday, 7 AM to 10 AM UTC. So that's pretty much the usual time that most people are working with. That's pretty late at night for those of you on the North and South American continents. For us in Europe, it's quite early in the morning. For those of you, probably Asia and Australasia and stuff, it should be quite all right. I guess that'll probably be your afternoon time. I guess that's the people it might affect the most. So maybe like late afternoon, late night. Size of the patch 2.5 gigabyte. It seems to be pretty standard. This is how we seem to be going in the future at the moment. Nice little summary here. Obviously, they're introducing the alternative American battleships, but how much of an alternative they are is going to be interesting to see. They're obviously coming as early access, and there's also some in the Bureau. Obviously, quite a lot of American battleships is patched, all in relation to July the 4th, Independence Day. That's where the United States saved the world and killed the aliens, if I remember from the movie I used to watch as a kid. Now, also in addition, we do have the German aircraft carriers. So, starting off with the alternative American battleships in early access. Pretty much just big, slow hunks of metal as per the existing tech tree. Just, I guess, some slight alternatives here and there for the purposes of making them different, I guess you could say. Having a more concise look into the breakdown, like enlarging that image. See, I've come prepared this time. So what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at the Nevada at tier 4. She's equipped with 10 14-inch guns, but she's going to be doing sub 20 knots. Same with Tennessee, but Tennessee this time comes with 12 14-inch guns. And it's also worth mentioning that Tennessee's sister was California. So we've already got a member of this class in the game, but as a premium and with an extensive AA rework. So in regards to the Tennessee, it's basically going to be a California pre-California rebuild, I guess you could say. So I guess if you played the maneuverability and the speed will be slightly different due to the additional torpedo bulging that they put on the California. But how much different is going to be interesting to see, I guess you could say. Vans has only just woken up and he hasn't watched Wales Weekly yet. Fair enough. Good morning then, for those of you over there. Now, Tier 6, we see the North Carolina coming. She's equipped with 9 16-inch guns. Apparently quite a fast traverse on those. But she's only going to be doing about 24 knots, if I remember correctly. But she should have a decent anti-aircraft build. Now, those are the 3 battleships which are entering early access. They'll be available in United States big crates and the smaller crates, which will be available over the duration of the campaign. These crates can be collected via the campaign, some via playing arena, and there's also going to be some additional. Well, you can purchase as many additional ones as you want through the store. Now, obviously, all these ships will become researchable in the July patch, and at the same time will be the Kansas, which we'll see in at Tier 7. Now, if I remember from the Kansas, she's basically just got more 16-inch guns. I think she's got 12 16-inch guns, but she's only doing about 23 knots. So she's just continuing along that line of big, heavy, slow, potentially hard-hitting American battleships with good AA. Probably good steering maneuverability, but not great speed. Now, jumping back into the notes, I'm just going to make sure I click the right one. There you go. Obviously, we're going into the Georgia on My Mind campaign. Now, Georgia's quite intriguing. I think she's a development of the Iowa class, but fitted with 18-inch guns. Is my quick brief summary of her, I guess you could say. Now here it says she offers relatively accurate and hard-hitting 18-inch guns, but the main battery is limited to 6 guns, so she's only got AB turret and then Y turret at the rear. Now, despite this limited number, she does seem to have a reload quite quickly for 18-inch guns, good AA, top speed of 33 knots, and comes with a engine boost as well, so she's going to be motoring along quite nicely. And I think I do have the official image of the Georgia there for you to actually look at. Now, when it comes to the Georgia, a quick summary of some of the pros and cons. Looks like she does have very hard-hitting AP shells. Looks like she's going to have quite good dispersion, and the guns are going to be fairly quick reloading for their caliber. Now, the secondary battery looks like it's going to be quite accurate as well, so it's going to be interesting that she might have a decent secondary battery. Overall, the ship's doing quite a decent amount of speed, 33 knots. Looks like she's going to have a very good AA complement. Obviously, mentioning she does have that engine boost. Potentially, she might have a slightly different repair party, which would be interesting to see. However, the downsides, obviously, that low gun count, only 6 guns. That's going to be quite restricting, and that's obviously going to be affecting her main battery DPM. So her DPM overall is like her alpha is going to be quite good, but her overall DPM is going to be quite poor, I guess you could say. Also, it looks like the range of these main battery guns is going to be quite short, which is going to be interesting. It means that she's going to have to close in to obviously take advantage of these 18-inch guns. I do apologise. It looks like armor-wise, probably very similar to the Iowa. That's to be expected, which means that she can get hurt quite a lot by high explosive spam. Also, it looks like shell velocity on the AP shells can be quite slow, which means that if at the maximum range, enemy ships are going to have a reasonable amount of time to actually respond to your incoming AP shells. Also, looks like you're going to have poor torpedo protection, so she's going to go down very quickly to torpedoes potentially, or at least lower damage torpedoes are going to have a better chance of causing flooding potentially. Furthermore, looks like she's going to have quite a large turning radius, which could impact her ability to kite, because large turning radius obviously means that it can take a bit of a while to kite in and out. Because when it comes to kiting, it's all down to your rudder shift and your turning radius. If you have a large turning radius, even the fastest rudder isn't going to really get you turning that quickly, I guess you could say. So, that's the Georgia. She's obviously available at the end of the campaign. Campaign's running for 5 weeks for 100 milestones, and the amity backing is still 2,500 doubloons. Obviously, there is a bit of a breakdown here, but let's just look into the actual main breakdown and the things that, like most standard players, are going to be interested in. So what most players are going to be interested in is what's going to be coming with things like promotion orders. So 14 promotion orders, insignias, 1 insignia, commendations, 1 commendation. Worth noting, you're not going to be getting any doubloons with the campaign without amity backing, which is quite interesting. So Georgia's a paper ship. Yeah, I think the Georgia's mostly a paper ship. It's an evolution of the Iowa class, and potentially could have been built if the war did drag on, but never really came through. So I can't remember the alternative names of these ships are. It does escape me. I think it begins with an M. Hello to Zul, Kalu. Good to see you. Much obliged. So, yeah, with amity backing, you're looking at 16,790 doubloons for 2,500 doubloons. The additional awards you'll be getting, focusing on the main ones: 26 promotional orders, 3 insignias, 3 universal accommodations, and you're only going to get doubloons back if you actually purchase the amity backing. Now, with the amity backing, the total amount of awards is 71,015. And as always, I have done my little breakdown, so let's have a look at that. So this is basically a track of all the campaigns historically where the informational data is available. So as you can see, without amity backing, you're actually getting a below average amount of rewards in doubloon value. The average doubloon value for a campaign is 18,377. With amity backing, you are getting a bit more than average. The average is 68,474, so it's nice to see that you are getting a bit more. The difference between them is above average. So I guess that's not too bad. Obviously, it doesn't mean that getting amity backing is a bit more worthwhile. The percentage, or the difference, so basically this is comparing the difference of how much of the overall doubloonage value are you getting of the campaign without amity backing. So without amity backing, you'll be getting 23.64% of the rewards. Now, it's always worth noting that when it comes to getting amity backing, the value does include the price of the ship, and the price of the ship is quite high. So that's why, obviously, that's one of the main reasons for the big jump. So that's quite intriguing. It's amusing to look back and see that probably one of the best campaigns we've had in a long time was the April 21 campaign, where you got 41% of the overall awards without amity backing. That's quite intriguing, but that really is an outlier. But yeah, that's just a little breakdown of stats. I'm sure that's of interest to some of you. Jumping back to the stream, I'll have a quick look at the chat. Where are we? Vaz, at least they have raised the backing doubloons back up to 750. That's a bit better. Montana had 4 turrets. Oh, okay. So, yeah. Did she? Obviously, I don't know my American battleship history as well as I do the British. I'll have to take your word for that one then. It sounds like a potential. If they're going to reduce the number of guns per turret, maybe they're going to increase the number of turrets. That sounds like an American kind of thing to do. So maybe the Georgia's like a paper design ship somewhere between the Montana and the Iowa, maybe. Hello, Brandon. Good to see you. Much obliged. As always, if I can encourage you, feel free to give the stream a thumbs up. I'm much obliged. And obviously, down in the description, you can follow along with the patch notes, and you can also redeem the hidden redeem code, which is here. If that does interest you, that is down in the description with a link to the redeemers to make your life a bit easier. Yes, Montana was basically an Iowa with an extra turret with 18-inch guns. Very nice. Interesting. Now, going on to the Oklahoma project. Now, bear with, the Oklahoma is exactly is the sister ship to the Nevada. What the exact differences are going to be between the Oklahoma and the Nevada yet to really be investigated, I guess you could say. Potentially, there could actually be absolutely no difference between the Oklahoma and the Nevada, except the Oklahoma being a premium. But it's to be seen. I guess it'd be something to have a look at when the patch notes obviously, well, once the patch actually drops. But it'd be interesting to see whether the CCs will get access to the Oklahoma for testing purposes. Maybe, probably not actually. I don't think the CCs will get it until kind of towards later down the line. So it's going to be difficult to actually do some comparisons between the Oklahoma and the Nevada as a CC. Maybe some questions I might have to put towards the devs. But again, they talk about solid armor and things like that, but it's just going to be a Nevada. I think the main reason for introducing the Oklahoma to the Bureau is probably just to give these kind of like camouflages. Now, note, they are only grade 1 permanent camouflages, so if you want to make these probably worthwhile, you're going to have to invest your own paint into them. Now, obviously, we've got the Tech Tree Nevada, the Tennessee, the North Carolina, and the Kansas. Also, the Premium Oklahoma, and then the Tech Tree New Mexico, Colorado, and New York. So basically, most of the Tech Tree American battleships Tier 4 to Tier 6, plus the Oklahoma on the way. And as you see, it's this American Stars and Stripes camouflage. Now, obviously, this is it's not time limited as of yet. However, it will be time limited in the future. Very much what they did with the California campaign. If you remember the California campaign that came out last year, in regards to, I think that was the July patch as well. And the California is, I believe, is now no longer available in the Bureau. Now, I guess for the thing that's, I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of person is excited about German aircraft carriers, but I'm sure someone out there is. You can just put me in the chat if you want. Now, it's interesting to see these lovely fantasy carriers, I guess you could say. I mean, one of them is kind of based on history, but apart from that, he's all kind of made up, I guess you could say. Got the Rhine at Tier 3. I can't really find anything historically about the Rhine, to be completely honest. The Visor, I guess you could say now. This actually does have a smidge of history. You wouldn't believe it. She's basically Germany was building the Admiral Hipper heavy cruisers. So they were the Admiral Hipper, which was built, the Blucher, which was built and then sunk very early in the war in the Norwegian campaign. Prince Eugen, famously known for being given to America as a war prize after the war and nuked. The other two, there's the Cyblitz and the Lutzel. Now, Lutzel was, at the start of the war, she was basically just a hull. And Germany sold the Lutzel's hull to the Soviet Union as a kind of like a peace offering, I guess you could say. Russia wanted to buy something, and America... Well, no, sorry, Germany had this hull of a cruiser that they didn't actually have sufficient resources or money or time to really finish because they're in the crux of a war. So they went, well, we got this hull. Russia's looking to buy, sell it. That just leaves the Cyblitz. Now, the Cyblitz was mostly complete. However, obviously, war starts, you've got economical pressures, and you've got to build tanks, is the best way to put it. And so the Cyblitz was kind of like construction halted, and they did look at converting her into a carrier, and this is where the Visor actually comes from, or the Visor. But obviously, trying to suddenly convert a heavy cruiser into an aircraft carrier in the middle of the war is not exactly the best thing to do. And therefore it didn't really get off the ground. They never really started any of the actual construction into the conversion, and she was, at the end of the day, she was scuttled in 1943, I believe, and to stop the Soviet advance. Now, the August Percival, she historically, there's no history really there. She's a potential advancement from the Graf Zeppelin design of aircraft carrier, but... So she might be partially paper design, but really considering the Graf Zeppelin, wasn't really an effective carrier if she ever was going to be finished. The chances of the August Percival actually being as she is represented in the game is very unlikely. I always like to refer to the Graf Zeppelin as, please recall, she could only ever launch 12 aircraft because of her air reserve catapult. Obviously, World Warships, they get to make it up as they go along. I mean, you've already seen from the World Warships PC dev blog, they're inventing Russian carriers, so I guess it's not too far-fetched. I kind of feel sorry for the French, I have to be honest, because France actually did have a carrier, the Bern, and ironically, it seems to be that France might be eventually the last nation to actually get aircraft carriers, because, yeah, it seems a bit unfair because the French actually did have they had the Bern, and they actually had some interesting carrier designs which potentially could have actually be based off of. Anyway, quickly catching up with the chat. I'm sure you don't want me to keep going on about these German carriers and how amusingly false they are. So I'll just scroll down a little bit. California's a beast lover. Personally, California's not, well, I don't really like the slow American battleships. The only joy I seem to get out of California is if I have a division colleague who's playing in the California, and I like to push them along, because at the back of the California there's 2 AA pods, and if you can wedge the nose of a cruiser between the AA pod and the point of the stern, you can push a California along. I think I managed to get a California up to 26.6 knots in the Lagazian there with the engine boost on. Pixel Mug, hello. Glad to see you. Much obliged. Wales not stopping with the napkin art ship. I know what you mean. So I'm excited about the German CVs. I'm not excited about the unneeded buff to the US CV bombs. Yeah, I kind of agree. And yeah. Hello, Sax. Good to see you. Brandon, by the way, historical photos of the German CVs were amazing. Yeah, it took me a while to try and find those historically accurate photos of the German CVs, but I'm glad you enjoyed them in Wales Weekly. Yeah, so as I kind of predicted for a while now, the German carriers are coming with AP bombs. So this is going to be interesting in regards to thinly decked battleships and cruisers. Now, obviously, it does mean that when it comes to bombing with the German dive bombers, you are going to have to be a bit more accurate, because you are going to be trying to aim for the center of the ship, trying to pick out the citadel. So okay, it might take maybe a bit more skill or a bit more persistence to actually make these AP bombs work. But if they do go through, it's going to be citadel damage. Citadel damage can't be repaired. This is the thing. As soon as carriers dropped and they kind of said they weren't going to rule out AP bombs, and then they announced the German carriers, I was like, German carriers, AP bombs, they've given it away. And lo and behold, here we are, German carriers, AP bombs. Yeah, obviously it means they can't start fires. That means they have to be a bit more accurate with their bombs, I guess you could say. Furthermore, I guess it means the bombs are going to be useless against destroyers, but like from personal experience, trying to hit destroyers with bombers I personally find it quite difficult. In fact, against destroyers, I'd much rather use torpedo bombers, because the torpedoes, I seem to have a lot more luck at torpedoing destroyers compared to actually bombing them. Obviously, they're going to be getting a new commander, Hans Geisler, and I can actually bring him up for you so you can have a look at his lovely, beautiful face. There you go, gentlemen and ladies. What's he going to be offering us? Well, obviously, his base trait is in regards to the reload speed of the secondary battery. Now, this will affect all ships, so it could be quite an interesting inspiration for secondary battery build battleships, so potentially German battleships, potentially Warspite if you're into that kind of thing. Thing is, it only enhances reload speed, so usually people like to buff range. Let's see, the reload speed, what's that going to be going up to? I haven't actually done the calculations. I mean, it will buff the reload speed by 6%, but you got to remember that secondaries already reload quite quickly. So 6% on like 6 seconds is not going to be a lot. Like it could be intriguing if you're thinking of combine, like using this trait and having the secondary battery booster, which again that improves the reload. But again, it's small percentages on a small reload time, so the overall benefit might not be that beneficial, if you know what I mean. And obviously it might improve your DPM, but you're only going to be improving your DPM in very particular situations, I guess you could say. Now he's also got some other traits. His legendary trait is called Corkscrew. So that's his unique one. So obviously he's got fully packed, but he's also got Corkscrew. Corkscrew will reduce the incoming damage to your carrier when allies are nearby. Obviously the main ability, the constant ability, is it improves the AP bombs, but the passive ability is this in reducing the incoming damage to your carrier when near allies, which means you have to kind of keep up with your team, which means you're going to be throwing your German carrier into the fray, I guess you could say. Whether that's an advantageous tactic, I don't know. I mean, these German carriers are going to have slightly better secondaries in comparison to the American and the Japanese CVs, but I wouldn't exactly say they're going to have monster secondary builds. So throwing them in there might not be the best thing to do early. Maybe late game, maybe for capping and throwing it in there, then I could potentially understand it. But it seems like but then you're relying on someone being next to you. And if you're playing late game, the chances of someone else still being alive next to your carrier is going to be questionable. It's the best way to put it. He's also got a unique trait called Impervious. Now, this skill reduces the damage to your carrier. Again, from instances of fire and flooding. But again, that seems like a really strange trait when you consider that the damage control party of a carrier, was it like a 60-second duration? So usually if you catch fire, your damage control party goes off. For 60 seconds, you're impervious to fire and flooding. Then it goes on to reload for, let's say, what would it be? Is it 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever it is? And then you've got this monster damage control party back again. So the amount of fire and flooding that you're going to be taking in the carrier in normal gameplay isn't going to be that vast. I mean, maybe it might be more beneficial if you are doing this kind of like throw it in there kind of attitude with your corkscrew and your secondary build and stuff, but I'm not sure that maybe it's going to be a wait and see if that is actually a playstyle that you can do in the German carriers. But yeah, he's going to be obviously available in German commander crates and the generic commander crates after the patch drops. So again, this brings a question: if you've got all the commanders, it might be worth not completing the weekly boost, or not completing the weekly boost and getting the commander crate before the patch drops, and maybe wait until after the patch drops, and then you can collect the crate, which would then have a chance of dropping hands. Because if you collect that commander crate before the patch drops, it won't have a chance of dropping hands. So if you've got all the commanders and you're looking to obviously pick hands up, it might be beneficial waiting to complete the weekly boost after the patch has dropped, therefore guaranteeing you're going to get hands. That's probably something I'm going to look into, because otherwise you're going to have to spend 10 million credits to get a commander crate, or 1,250 doubloons for a commander crate, because there's no commander crates being given away as the campaign. Oh well, that's hands all covered over, so we can just jump back to the stream and have a quick look at the chat, see where people are looking. Pixelmark, now I'm wondering if a DD brushing German carriers will be an actually useful move before the AP bombs can do too much damage. I think it probably will, because I think your torpedoes and detectability will mean that you'll be able to see the carrier, torpedo the carrier in most destroyers without the carrier knowing you're there, or the carrier not being able to really do too much about you. So that's going to be interesting. Tazul, I'm going to move on to Invasive Maneuvers next. And then managed to get 7 kills with a carrier recently. Oh, that's going to be quite interesting. Hans is going on the Bismarck with Celiax and Hipper. Yeah, no, I could see that. No worries. I mean, 6% reload on destroyers is still valuable when building secondaries. Yeah, it might be, but it's. I feel it's going to be kind of a. What are you sacrificing for 6% reload on your secondary battery? So what are you sacrificing for 0.6 seconds, say, off of your secondary battery reload, or 0.3 seconds off your secondary battery reload? I think that's what you really need to think about there. Hello, Warships Love. Good to see you. And then was 10 mil credits, nothing to me. Fair enough. But guess it depends on how many credits you've got. Yeah, so as Tazul's kind of like mentioned, Invasive Maneuvers, I'm sure that everyone's ecstatic about the idea of this kind of consumable. Personally, no, I'm not. This just seems really stupid. I'm just out there straight off the bat. This is stupid. Why? Seriously, why? So they're introducing this new consumable for Tier 7 carriers of all nations called Invasive Maneuvers, which means your squadron is invulnerable to damage. It can take no damage for a short duration. The consumable's duration is 6 seconds. Okay, it's a very short amount of time. You're going to get 2 of these, okay. All aircraft carrier commanders come fully packed. Practically assume that every aircraft carrier is going to have 3 of these, okay. Now the reload time's 150 seconds. Okay, yeah, that's quite a long reload, I guess you could say. That's 2 and a bit minutes to 2 minutes 30. However, it's a bit evil, is the best way to put it, because let's just, for me, an example, I'm in my Lexington, I've got my Flight 6 aircraft up, and I see an Iowa, an Alaska, and some other, but maybe getting an Alabama, right? And they're all nicely clustered together. You know, that's a really horrible amount of AA to go up against. But I want to take advantage of the situation that I can kind of see. Right, first drop of planes, safety drop. Drop your torpedoes, bugger off back to the carrier. Right, that leaves me with 3 aircraft. I can now start flying in. I'll pick the most isolated target from the group, but it's still going to be some vicious AA. But to guarantee I'm going to get the drop off, and not lose any additional aircraft, I'm accepting I'm going to lose 3 aircraft, but in a way to avoid losing any additional aircraft, I've already sent 3 back to the carrier. I'm flying these 3 in, and then I can then pop this kind of consumable as I'm getting in. As once I've gone into the drop and I'm closing in, and the AA is really starting to pick up, I can then activate this and just guarantee that my planes make it through. So then that's going to be 3 torpedo hits on against, let's say, the Iowa. I mean, it's a silly consumable. I just don't like the idea of it. Why injure? And the worst part is it completely bypasses the new, what they're renaming no fly zone. And it, I don't know. Oh well, we might as well continue being a bit salty, and we'll go on to the next one, which is they're introducing spotting ribbons, which is brilliant. You know, I'd love to see spotting ribbons. I want to see spotting ribbons in the game. Why only carriers? Why? Like, this makes absolutely no sense in my mind. Just, if you can just turn it on like this, just turn it on for everyone. Why are you separating it for carriers only? You're not even changing the XP. Everyone's still going to earn the same amount of XP for spotting that they do. So why have you only turned it on for carriers? I mean, if you're going to turn it on just for some classes, I'd say at least make it carriers and destroyers at least. This just seems like a bit, again, it's okay, maybe it's baby steps in the right direction, but just get on with the show is the best way to put it. I'm sure that maybe I'm not the only one who's a bit salty about all this. I'm sure if I look at the chat, there might be some other people who are a bit salty. I don't know what to think about the evasive maneuvers. Seems too OP. Yeah, potentially, Brandon, potentially. Brandon, I tried saving up my commander crates when the last CV commanders were released, but I got a dupe of a regular commanders. I spent 900k commander XP for one to get another through the mission. Yeah, like, if any commander crates that you get before the patch won't contain any commanders released after the patch, if you get what I mean. So you have to get the commander crates once the patch drops, unfortunately. Brandon, I'm pretty sure that consumer isn't even on PC. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's kind of like pandering towards making carriers as strong as they are on PC, which I really don't want to see. Val's just finished a DD game with 6k damage. I've finished first on the team due to spotting and capping, and we won. Go figure. Yeah, so why not give you some spotting ribbons? At least let you see your spotting. Like, give you some inclination that you're actually doing some spotting. Anyway, moving on to Arena. Now, Arena's back, Season 4. It's only Tier 4 ships. So again, it's low tier ships. You're going to have to get used to me being quite salty when it comes to reading patch notes. I usually seem to get a bit salty about patch notes. But this time they're obviously introducing arms race as part of Arena. So with Arena, there will still be a central capture zone. Capturing the central capture zone does end the game. It does. I believe that the leaderboard will be based on ship XP, but no, obviously more information will be forthcoming. Now, the season will be running from June the 24th until July the 12th. Now, an interesting one is obviously with this arms race mode, it means there will be additional capture zones on the map. If your team captures that capture zone, then you'll get buffs. It's very similar to the way that you saw that space combat mode work for April. Now, whether it's going to be exactly the same kind of like rewards for capturing these consumable capture zones, or whether it's going to be slightly different, slightly toned down, I think we're going to have to wait for more information regarding Arena when it comes, when it's forthcoming, just before Arena drops. But it's interesting to look at the rewards here. Quite a few universal accommodations, so that's quite intriguing. Obviously, the rewards are cumulative, so if you say you're in the top 25%, you're going to get the rewards for the top 25, top 50, top 90, and participation. So again, that's quite good, I guess you could say. Now, there is an interesting one where they've kind of introduced this kind of like cap on the number of games per day that count towards your final leaderboard placement. So this cap is basically it's the best 15 games of your day. So say you play 30 games every day, as I said in Wales Weekly, only your best 15 games of each day will count towards your overall progress on the leaderboard. It's an interesting introduction. It's kind of what I was expecting because obviously the previous leaderboards have been a bit skewed by people who have that kind of time just to keep grinding. And so the leaderboard, you could kind of say, wow, yes, some of it's based on skill, because obviously you have to be a skillful player to earn XP, but then also at the same time, you didn't need skill to play 100 games a day. You could just keep throwing it in if you just had all day to do it. So obviously that meant that the leaderboard was either some of it was skill, but at the same time some of it was who had the most time. So by introducing it as the 15 best, obviously you're going to need time to play 15 games, so that's still a lot of games. However, only the best 15, so that's quite intriguing, I have to admit. Now, obviously going along, as you can see, the rewards. Steel was introduced from top 50% up. It's interesting to see that they're starting to try and give away more steel through these events. I think they're kind of realising that the amount of steel that you can earn does seem a bit on the low side, to the point where the value of steel, I guess you could say, is kind of like inflated. And because of that, I kind of feel that the rewards that they currently give away for steel aren't worth the actual value of steel. They're probably twice the price, because the time it takes to actually accrue steel compared to the actual value of the rewards just doesn't add up in my mind. So I think rather than reducing the cost of the things being sold for steel in store, they're trying to spread steel out a bit more, make steel a bit easier to accrue for certain players and people like that. So it's quite interesting there. Now jumping back into the chat actually before we move on to the next section, what do we have? Gotcha, that's annoying. Warships Arena looks nice with all the steel. Yes, very true, very true. Brandon, the new season is like a mix between Galaxy Event, yes, and Rust and Rumble. Yeah, pretty much. That's like a really nice analogy. Rust and Rumble, I feel very much was a testing of the idea of Arena, and then Galaxy Quest, let's call it Galaxy Quest, was very much an introduction or testing of arms race. So this is very much, like you say, like a combination of the two. Vaz, to handicap people with endless amounts of time, there was a vocal minority really against that. Wargaming always listens to the loudest critics for the better or worse. I don't know, I kind of feel it's an interesting one, but it's like they've implemented like a handbrake, but at the same time it's a very lenient handbrake. So it still leaves a lot of leniency. 15 games, that's still a lot of games, really. I mean, that's more than I play in a night, I have to confess, and I usually only get about 2 or 3 hours to play every night. Pixel, I'm probably going to do enough for the commander materials at 50/25 and then nothing else. I'm tempted to pump everything into Norman Scott just despite the new buff carriers. Yeah, I know what you mean. For me, who's my AA commander build? I think I've got Beeple as my AA commander build, and then I've got obviously the inspirations of I think it's Yamaguchi and King. Salty Sacks, this 15 games thing sucks. I can see it in that regards, in regards to your career line, Sacks, because obviously you work long days, and the only time you get to put into arena is on your 2 days off per week, and obviously that 15 games means you're only going to have 30 games that count towards the overall total. It's all swings and roundabouts. I think, rather than personally, if you just handed the keys over to me and said, Major, fix it, I would say, yes, introduce a cap on the games, but don't make it a daily cap. Just make it an overall cap. So if they're going to say run this for example, let's say they run it for 7 days, introduce a cap which is equivalent to, say, 10 games per day. So you can say a player's best 70 games overall counts towards the leaderboard, but you can play those 70 games whenever you want within that 7 days. I feel that would be a lot more fairer way of doing this kind of cap. By doing it as a daily cap, it kind of does impede on the people who obviously don't have the time during the week and then only have the weekend to play. So that does is a bit of a pain. Yes, Warships, that is the code. It is down in the description along with a link to the Redeemer. So if you want to get yourself some red, white and blue American camouflages, feel free to just scroll down, pop out, check out the description. It's all there for you. Along with a link to the page to the patch notes if you want to read along. Sacks, if I play 100 games, the best 15 get used, but if I only play 15 games, that's all put towards the final score. Yeah, exactly. I kind of feel like it should be an overall cap of games over the duration rather than a cap per day. Would be my personal way of doing it. How they do it. Well, what Wargaming does is what Wargaming does. Now, there is this change, the status widget. I'm going to be intrigued to see how we can get access into this status widget, whether it's going to be through the Bureau, or whether it's through the campaign and missions, or whether this is going to be an additional widget that you can go into. I suspect it would be the additional widget. Now, obviously, like they're showing here, it shows the status on the campaign, your Bureau projects, and then it's got some interesting stuff where it tells you the Commander XP universal accommodations only, not your personal accommodations per commander. Overall insignias, promotion orders. God, I wish I had 2,841 promotion orders. That's a lot of promotion orders. And paint. Now, although interesting to have these kind of things, at the same time, it's not. Like, in all honesty, I'm probably not going to use this kind of widget. Maybe the Bureau might be interesting, to actually be able to see your 2 Bureau projects next to each other like that. That's going to be quite nice. The campaign, I don't really see that being much of an advantage, I have to confess. But I guess it's nice. Now, they're also going to be introducing some new filters into the port, which will allow you to filter just your Bureau mission ships or your current personal mission ships. That, I think, is a very good thing, actually. That's something. I'm surprised they haven't shouted a bit more about that. I don't know why they're just hiding it here. I think that's a really good step in the right direction, actually. That means that you can just hit square or hold square, then select Bureau ships, and all your Bureau ships turn up. Brilliant. You know, now I don't have to go into my Bureau, look at the objectives, see what ships I have to play, go back, look at the other one, see what ships I've got to play, go back. It's just press square, select Bureau ships, boom. Well, just done. Nice. I really like that. Really do. Balance changes. So they're introducing some changes, obviously to the aircraft carriers, as some people mentioned, also to legendary tier matchmaking. Now there is this interesting French change that they're doing. Let's bring this up on the big screen. So obviously, as you're seeing, in the aiming module slot for the French battleships, they're introducing this armament durability module. Now this is interesting in regards that it will improve the survivability of your main battery turrets, improve the survivability of your secondary battery turrets and your AA mounts, at the cost of your overall ship HP, which isn't that bad, really, especially considering things like the Richelieu. It's going to be intriguing to see if the Jean Bar gets this, considering how OP the Jean Bar is. If this comes on the Jean Bar, this is just going to be an auto take. To be honest, I think for most French battleships, this might be an auto take straight off the bat. Is the best way to put it. So it's going to be intriguing to see exactly which French battleships get it. But if it is all of them, it's practically going to be an auto take. I almost feel. Which is interesting. It's nice to see. It's intriguing to see that they're now introducing some slightly more nation-based modules in comparison to some of the others. Like at the moment, the only nation that's really had some special modules for their ships has been like American battleships. So it's interesting to see here that we're getting some French ones. I do wonder if they're going to continue to expand this and add some additional ones for other nations as well. Other changes. Arthur's the Cold, obviously they did. Remember they nerfed his ability straight off the bat for when the catapult fighter was launched for cruisers. They're now buffing that back up. The reason being is obviously they did reduce the duration of the fighter consumable, so fair's fair. HE bombs and the Langley, the amount of damage has gone up, fire chance has gone up. It's the Langley at the end of the day, it's only going to drop 2 bombs per flight. Okay, fair enough. But they keep buffing carriers, and it does keep concerning me, especially the Lexington. I find the bombs on the Lexington are already quite good. You're dropping 6 bombs per drop. Now, it's slightly different. I think the reason why they're doing this is for people who haven't played much of the Lexington, bombing can be slightly awkward in comparison to the Ranger. However, for someone like me who probably mostly focuses on playing the Lexington if I'm going to play a carrier, I find the bombing of the Lexington a lot easier in comparison to the Ranger just due to how much I've played them. And so buffing the bomb damage and the fire chance of the Lexington, I just feel it's unnecessary. I feel they're already good enough. Admittedly, it's a tiny buff, a tiny tweak, but they keep tweaking it, and every time it's a tiny bit, and I do wonder when it's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, they're starting to address legendary tier matchmaking because it's ruined, is the best way to put it, because the only ships they've introduced have been legendary tier destroyers and legendary tier battleships. Most people you end up with just these games with lots of battleships, lots of destroyers, barely any cruisers. Any cruisers are usually dragged up tier 7 cruisers because there's only one cruiser to choose from, the Alaska, the American battle cruiser. So finally, I think it's interesting to see, okay, they've made the matchmaking equal. So if there's 5 destroyers on one team, there'll be 5 destroyers on the other team. So basically it won't be like give or take 1. So you won't get into the situation where there's 5 battleships on one team and 4 battleships on the other team. But really, I think this kind of means, in my mind, Wargaming have finally acknowledged that they messed up Legendary Tier by not introducing cruisers at a sufficient rate that they've introduced all these other battleships and destroyers, is my opinion of it. Because I think if you had destroyers, you wouldn't have to worry too much about the overpopulation of... if you introduce more cruisers, you wouldn't have to worry too much about the overpopulation of destroyers. And I think this kind of shows that Wargaming are recognising that they've messed up. They've messed it up truly and royally. Because at the moment, if you're a cruiser player, you can either play the Alaska, which is practically a battleship, or you have to play the Karabosk or the Gearing, because they're practically the next closest thing to being a cruiser at Legendary Tier. Obviously, we've got the Worcester on the way, but that's a drop in the ocean in comparison to the number of destroyers and battleships that we have. Interestingly, there's this comment here regarding that they've made the ship service cost of a Tier 3 carrier have to pay for the number of aircraft that get shot down. However, they also buff the amount of income that they get to compensate for this. So practically what that really means is as a Tier 3 carrier, you're not really going to see any change in your overall credit earning. You're just going to earn more credits, but have a higher ship service cost at the end of the day. So that's really just a swings and roundabouts thing, and I think if they could have just got a way of not including that in the patch notes, and no one would probably have noticed, in all honesty. Right, before we jump into bug fixes, let's have a quick catch up with the chat. Fans, it would be better if it was 3 or 4 slot. Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. That would be interesting if they made it the 3rd or 4th slot, especially if they made it the 4th slot for that French battleship consumable. Then that would have made it a lot more of a, rather than it be a given decision, that would make it a bit more of a decision as to, oh, do I want main battery like reload time, or do I want this turret health, or do I want the gun range? That would have been a lot more of a tougher decision. Big Red One, 1991. I've been favoriting my bureau ships. They must have been watching me. Fair enough. Faz, they finally fixing legendary tier 7 matchmaking after over a year. Yeah, but is it fixing it? Because you still can't play a cruiser. It just means that rather than it being 5 destroyers and 4 destroyers versus 4 battleships and 5 battleships, it's just going to be 5 destroyers and 5 destroyers versus 4 battleships. Well, 5 destroyers and 4 battleships versus 5 destroyers and 4 battleships. I don't call that fixed. They just balanced the problem, is the best way to put it. It's not resolved. It's still a mess. It's just an equal mess rather than it being a unequal mess. Would be my summary of it. Jumping on to the bug fixes. So they're changing the name of All Out Anti-Air to No Fly Zone, but how can it be called a No Fly Zone when you can have immunity to your aircraft for 6 seconds as they make an approach on a ship? Just saying. So, okay, that's just a rename. Now, the filter submenu sometimes opened up with an animation that didn't display correctly. Okay, that's just an animation fix. There's also a ping in the area fix. Sometimes it would incorrectly select the ship or to highlight the ship instead. A rare port screen wouldn't display before battle. Consumable list wouldn't update in a timely manner. So that's just a bit of in-game lag. Plotting course for an aircraft carrier broke if a player disconnected and returned to the game. Okay, so that, I guess that's interesting. That basically, if you disconnect from the game in an aircraft carrier and your autopilot is already plotted, while you're disconnected, your aircraft carrier will keep moving. That's interesting. But I kind of feel that maybe aircraft carriers should not be an exception to the rule. I mean, if you're a normal player if you're playing a destroyer or a cruiser or a battleship and you get disconnected, what your ship does when you're not there is really haywire. I think it just slows down and just sometimes they do loops, sometimes they reverse up and stuff and bounce into things. I feel even aircraft carrier players should have to suffer this. If they disconnect, then their ships should go AWOL. They shouldn't have this extra buff where they can sulk off to the back of the map with their autopilot while they're disconnected. I think that's a bit unfair. Premium ships come in this patch. For those of you who've been playing the game for a long while, then you'll probably already have these ships. We've got the Ben Hum coming for 500,000 global XP. We have the Massachusetts coming for 750,000 global XP. Now we've also got the Florida. Now the Florida does seem partially interesting. She's practically the only new premium ship coming to the game. I mean, obviously we've got the Oklahoma coming from the Bureau, but I wouldn't exactly say the Oklahoma is anything special in comparison to the Nevada. But here's the Florida for you. She might be of interest. Now she's got 12 number 14-inch guns. Now the reason being is she is a Washington Naval Treaties, or the Second London Naval Treaty compliant battleship, pre-escalation clause. So as some of you may know, in the Second London Naval Treaty, there was a clause which basically said that if Japan did not sign up to the London Naval Treaty before a certain date, then there was an escalation clause which increased the caliber of the main battery of any new battleships. So before this clause, the main caliber was limited to 14-inch guns. However, if Japan did not sign up, then that main caliber would increase to 16-inch guns. Now, because of this escalation clause, this is why the King George V class battleships of the Royal Navy have 14-inch guns. Now, the Americans started building, I think it's the North Dakota class or the South Dakota class, can't remember which one, but they started building that class with the intention of equipping them with these quadruple 14-inch gun turrets. Now, what happened was when Japan didn't sign up, they were able to swap these quadruple 14-inch gun turrets, and I think they were able to swap them for it's either dual gun or triple gun 16-inch gun turrets, probably triple gun 16-inch turrets. Now, this is a representation of that design, I guess you could say. Sorry about that. So what does this ship give you? Well, obviously it gives you 12, 14-inch guns. Looks like she's going to have good dispersion. Looks like she's going to have good shell velocity, or comfortable shell velocity, it says. Good main battery range, especially considering 14-inch guns. Looks like she might have quite thick deck armour, so that might be quite useful against AP. Good AA sweep. What do you expect with an American battleship, though? Good concealment as well. Something to really expect. When you have these small caliber battleships, usually have good concealment to almost complement the slightly reduced range, I guess you could say, of the smaller caliber guns. Downsides, obviously, small caliber, so the AP is not going to be able to overmatch 25mm of armour. Looks like the high explosive shells might be rather anemic, I guess you could say, quite low damage and low fire chance. Looks like you're going to have a slow main battery reload and a slow turret traverse as well, so you're going to have to do some pre-planning about which ships you're going to be picking out. Now she's going to have quite a low hit pool potentially for her tier, and looks like she might be slightly poorly armoured in regards to her nose and stern armour, and she might have a citadel which is slightly exposed above the waterline, so showing broadside in this ship might be rather risky. Furthermore, she potentially might have a slow rudder shift, so that might not get you all excited. But it is a new tier 6 premium ship, and it's the only real new premium ship that we're getting this this patch, so that's might be of interest for some people. Right, I'll just jump back to the to the patch notes. I'll scroll all the way back up to the start, and I'll catch up with the chat. And if you've got any questions, feel free to shout out, or and we'll we'll just continue until if there's no more questions or anything like that. Obviously, if you can, feel free to give the stream a thumbs up. We'd be much obliged. Let's see. Naval History Hubby. Good evening. Good evening. Vaz, it was really frustrating to see one team with an Otago and the other team gets a Shimakaze. This type of thing happened to turn. Yeah, it's like they have fixed Legendary Tier in some regards, but I still say Legendary Tier is still broken, I guess you say. Brandon, Florida, yes, Florida does looking and reasonably interesting. Obviously only 14-inch guns, but probably mostly having to use your armor piercing as well, but considering you've got things like the KG5 and the Normandy at tier 6, she's not exactly an outlier either. Las Vegas, Florida will sell like hotcakes. Well, I guess that's only good news for Wargaming, as you can say. Pixelmug, if there isn't an alligator camo for the Florida, I would be incredibly disappointed. There might not be one yet, but you never know what they might do for Halloween. Brandon, it's similar to the French BB, Alaska in terms of guns, amount of guns. Okay, French BB in terms of amount of guns, the Normandy. Tom, I love American ships, but the Florida is the only one I'm really excited about. It's different and unique for the American battleship in the game. Yeah, no, that's definitely true, especially in regards to her tier and her guns, I guess you could say. And we finally have a tier 6 American BB premium. Yeah, that's true. I think most of your premiums are tier 7 or tier 5. Florida man should be a commander for Florida. His skills bath salts up your damage to 50%. They didn't nerf this ship to be worse than the tier 4. Mean Lion. Yeah, I probably do mean Lion. The name was. Yeah, you are correct. I do apologise. Yeah, it'd be the Normandy's the tier 5, isn't it? And the Lion's the tier 6. Because the Lion's a French battleship design which followed the First World War but never actually got implemented, whereas the Normandy was an actual French battleship design. I think all of the Normandy class got laid down, but none of the Normandy class actually ever got finished, and the only Normandy class hull that didn't get scrapped got converted into the French aircraft carrier Bern. More American ships, yeah. This patch is packed with American ships. What have we got? I mean, we've got Georgia, you've got Kansas, Nevada, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, and Oklahoma. And we're seeing a reappearance of the Massachusetts. So if you don't count the Massachusetts, you're looking at 7 new American battleships. If you include the Massachusetts, then we're looking at 8. Or I guess it depends if you have the Massachusetts, I guess you could say. Naval History Hub, I'll keep dreaming of British carriers in the corner. And then I think in time, it's just... I think one of the reasons why they haven't done British carriers as yet is because they feel that they don't have an idea of a unique trait for the British carriers. So obviously for the Japanese carriers, it's more torpedo focused. For the American carriers, it's more high explosive bomb focused. German carriers is AP bomb focused. With the British, I mean, potentially carpet bombing HE bombs for the Swordfish could be interesting. I know that's what they've got at the moment on PC. I mean, part of me, I hope they don't do it, but part of me also goes, well, they did actually fit HE rockets onto a Swordfish, didn't they? And I think it was one of the first aircraft to carry rockets for anti-submarine work. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to see it, but you never know. They might introduce rockets with the British. Warships got 187 damage and lived with a 3k health in the California. Oh, that's very nice. Very nice. You should have clipped that one. In naval history of British carriers armour quality. Yeah, I mean, obviously the British carriers would have armoured flight decks, but that's only going to be beneficial in regards to actually being attacked. And usually you don't want to be getting attacked. Yeah, I don't know what the special trait of the British is going to be, unless they have like larger torpedo flights, I guess you could say. Pixelmud, the addition of the Georgia is kind of pushing me to try and grind the British BB line just so I can cosplay General Sherman. Oh my, alright. Anyway, this stream has... How long has this stream been going for? It's been going for an hour. So unless there's any more final questions, then I'll probably start wrapping it up. As I've mentioned a couple of times, down in the description is the redeem code, which is hidden in the patch notes, along with the link to the redeemer if you want to go grab that. It does some red, white, and blue American camouflages. Fast. There's lots of stuff in this update, but I've got to be honest, a lot of it's nothing I'm interested in. German CVs thumbs down, and we already have tons of slow-moving USN battleships. In some respects, I almost kind of agree. Like, German CVs, I mean, they're intriguing, but they're not historically important. So I'm not super excited about them. They're probably going to be something that I'll probably get. I'll probably grind through. I'll probably play a little bit. But at the end of the day, I kind of feel that if I'm going to play carriers, I'm going to probably be playing the American carriers. I just seem to get on better with those. The American battleships, the slow nature of them has always been a massive turn-off for me. When it comes to the American battleship tech tree, I pretty much global XP'd all the way through it, and I don't play them at all. No, it's just a personal gameplay preference. I prefer a bit more speed with my battleships. So that means with this new line, it's pretty much going to be grind it through, get it over and done with, and probably never play it again, in all honesty. Right, and on that bombshell, we shall start ending the stream. Obviously, I'm going to sit around and continue with the chat, and I'll put Colonel Bogey's March on as a background music, and we'll have the outro. But if there's any more questions, I will quite happily answer them in the meantime. Warships, German CVs with the AP bombs do so much damage. It's going to be interesting to see what the damage and the armor penetration of those AP bombs is going to be. That's going to be something that you're going to have to take into account when it comes to the... well, when you're playing certain ships. I can see German AP bombers being incredibly dangerous to light cruisers. I think that's going to be the big shift. I think German CVs are going to probably affect cruisers a lot more than they're going to affect battleships. I mean, they're going to be a nuisance in general for everyone, apart from destroyers. But it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see. Jake, thumbs down for the whole update. I'm mutually disappointed, I guess you could say, would be the interesting way to put it. Like, we're getting getting slow battleships which aren't really my kind of playstyle interest. We're getting German CVs which have no historical interest, AP bombs, buffs to carriers which don't need buffs, introduction of spotting ribbons, but they're not universally introduced across all classes. I mean, there's some good stuff in there, but there's also a lot of not so good stuff, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all rolls out where after the patch drops. And yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll find time to stream post-patch and take a look at all the new instructions to the game. Well, if you have enjoyed this community interaction kind of review of the patch notes and the live stream, feel free to subscribe if you're not a subscriber, but thank you to everyone who is subscribed. You can always support the channel on Patreon. A link to Patreon is also down in the description, along with the email address for the channel if you want to send in any of your own game captures. The library is looking a little on the light side, so if you have had any core cover games or interesting games, or even terrible games, or just funny games, you can feel free to send them in. Just got to get them captured off your console and then send them into the email address. Well, thank you to everyone, and until next time, I'm the Gareth Major, and back to the port.